per 9000's game room.
Sports games were no strangers to the regular update system, but there was a time when they were pretty much the only thing to receive this kind of yearly treatment. Sure, there would be sequels to games in every genre, but the following game will always be accused of being the game which brought on the situation we now find ourselves in. The situation of having improved versions of games and DLC and all manner of ways of trying to prize more money out of your pocket. I am of course talking about Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Street Fighter 2 Turbo basically took the World Warrior, the original Street Fighter 2 game, and increased the speed, let you play as the 4 boss characters, and had some slight balancing related changes. It wasn't a whole new game, it was simply an improved version of the original with a few bells and whistles tied onto it. No one really minded what it was because, well, an improved version of one of the greatest games of a genre at the time was a good thing, wasn't it? Who was going to complain about that? It is important to note though that while some people do moan about DLC and paying for extras to add a few new characters, back then plenty of people brought Street Fighter 2 Turbo for £40 when it came out here. And to be honest, some people even imported it from Japan or America at great expense, paying like £100 or more for it. So this whole paying through the nose for extras certainly isn't a new thing. I was young at the time, so importing it or buying one of the imports that was being sold in some of the gaming shops near me for figures around the £80 mark was out of the question. I didn't expect to get it for a long time. One of the fortunate parts of my brother being older than me though was that sometimes he'd get something I wanted. I walked in one of the local game shops with my brother, and they ran a system where games were kept in different sections in relation to their worth. Now someone must have been looking at a Japanese copy of Turbo and put it in the wrong section because it was in a section for £20 games. The shop owner ran a policy where you could swap any game of yours for one of the shop's games for £3 if they were in the same section. The store owner was out and his wife was running the store, and so my brother swapped some old game he had for Japanese Turbo for £3. Which for me was an absolute result. We went home and played the living heck out of it. For at least 2 weeks my house became the place to be. Friends of mine and friends of his kept popping round to challenge one of us. I owned World Warrior at the time, and although Turbo was great, I couldn't help but think it was in no way worth the massive amounts people were paying for it. It hadn't moved on enough from World Warrior, but then again it wasn't a sequel, was it? I think I enjoyed the attention and the way it brought everyone together almost more than the game. It did become the new version played at everyone's parties, well at least until Super Street Fighter 2 that is. As a side note, I remember a special pad being made, a pad which had buttons which could with one press cause your character to do their special move. I didn't need one of these as I was very good at the game, but the whole idea fascinated me. They were also programmable, so you could program combos into a single button press. I messed around with a pad like this no end, seeing what I could do with it, not just on Street Fighter 2 but any other game. I did use the pad for training purposes though. There was a friend of mine who would always be Ken and would spam fireballs, and he'd gotten it down to a fine art. He could do them so fast it would seem inhuman. He was a great person, but he began to get a little too cocky with it and started ruining friendly get-togethers as he would fireball so much that no one would be able to beat him. No matter how much you dodged or blocked, it would get you in the end. So I got my brother to use the Street Fighter cheetah pad against me, till I could perform fireballs at insane speed. Then I was ready, it was Ken against Ken, and I taught him a lesson about how boring fireball spamming can get. This in itself put me off Street Fighter for a little bit though. I could talk about the game's graphics, the game's sound, the characters, but I did all that when I talked about the World Warrior. All I would be saying is, a little better this, a little faster, and talking about how you could play as the bosses. I gave World Warrior 8 out of 10, and yes, this is better, but only just better really, so I'd give it 8.5 out of 10. If you do decide you want this version and on cartridge, then it will set you back around £10, which is well worth it, but again you might want to stop and consider all of your options first. If you own a PS3 or an Xbox 360, then for very little you can get the Ultra version of Street Fighter 4. It's also worth considering the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, which is on the Switch, the Xbox One and the PS4, as this is a collection of 12 Street Fighter titles including Street Fighter 1, various versions of Street Fighter 2, various Street Fighter 3s and Street Fighter Alphas. So, although it might cost you a little more than a cart of Turbo, you'd be getting a heck of a lot for your money here. It's also interesting to note that when they released the mini SNES, Street Fighter 2 Turbo was one of the games chosen to be on there, and that's a decent way to get hold of this game and give it a go, as there's also another 20 games on there. Okay, that's Kerr9000 signing off. Keep on gaming.